In January of 2024, a headline came out from the New Yorker, said Gaza is starving. In March of 2024, the Washington Post ran a headline, is Gaza heading into a famine? The next day they ran another headline, Israel's warned Hamas brings famine to Gaza.
According to Hamas's own figures, Americans are 3 times as likely to die of malnutrition than Gazans right now.
They want to divide the Jewish state, Jerusalem as their capital, and create a 22nd Arab state called Palestine. Saudi Arabia's been very clear about that.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should be directly connected to the land and people of Israel. Happy to have you with us today. I'm Luke Hilton, here with Joshua Waller, Josiah Hilton. Make sure you subscribe, follow us, drop a comment down below if you're a new subscriber or viewer. Happy to have you with us. Before we dive into this massive topic of whether or not the children of Gaza are actually starving, we're going to get into all of that. You guys should know, I don't know if you watch the Kentucky Derby. I don't watch the Kentucky Derby typically. I lived in Kentucky for a year, but sovereignty beat out journalism. Watch this clip.
Journalism and sovereignty, nose to nose, down to the last 16th of a mile. Sovereignty has taken the lead. Journalism is second toward the inside. Baez is third, but it will be sovereignty to rule the Kentucky Derby.
So the Kentucky Derby, I think, captured a lot bigger of an audience than normal this year. That's just my guess, because a horse named Sovereignty beat out a horse named Journalism. And somehow it just seemed to be really fitting all around the world. And even more fitting in Israel. Last week, we talked about a specific BBC documentary that would just lied left and right and up and down and through their teeth about the settlers in the West Bank, right? And it's just kind of funny because right now the goal is for Israeli sovereignty to be applied in all of the land of Israel, and journalism, the media, is fighting against that idea, trying to spread lies and propaganda about the so-called West Bank. Lo and behold, sovereignty wins in the end.
What I love about it, Luke, is the fact that, of course, everybody was putting their money down on journalism. As the world has obviously done, and sovereignty won out kind of like unexpectedly. So, of course, here at the Israel Guys and to all of you guys, we're rooting sovereignty, and you guys all know that. Even though it may be the unpopular approach, we wholeheartedly believe sovereignty is going to win.
Unpopular.
And it did.
Unpopular and also like last minute, unexpected. Like this, you saw the clip that this horse came out right at the last minute.
Right. Our team was definitely rooting sovereignty. Actually, the fact is none of us knew that there was a horse named Sovereignty until he won.
I didn't know the Kentucky Derby was happening, honestly.
But the fact that it really seriously is cool at the fact that so sovereignty could have been running against anybody else. But literally, this is what's happening in our day today. The Jewish people and the international global media could not be more in this race. Like, it's literally opposition, one against the other. Jewish national identity, fight for their land, and global media opposition at war with each other, and sovereignty wins. It's just really cool.
Sovereignty wins in the end. I mean,
and sovereignty wins, of course.
Yeah, even if it doesn't look like it. Right? So just take hope from that. The big question is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Israel has not allowed aid or food into Gaza for 55 days now.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously the world is screaming, Gaza is starving, and you're seeing picture or videos of children on social media saying, I haven't eaten in 60 days, I haven't eaten in 6 weeks, whatever. I saw one video of a boy yelling that he hasn't eaten in, I can't remember how many weeks, but he was like, the number he was claiming, like he said, I haven't had bread in 60 days or something. Like, he wasn't even like emaciated looking. He was obviously like a very healthy looking, glowing, happy boy with lots of energy because he could scream at the top of his lungs. So we all know that Gaza is not starving, but there's some really interesting numbers and statistics coming out right now that proves that to you. So
the fact is, Luke, is that in Gaza, one thing that the children have learned for sure is that they can say whatever they want. Literally, they can say whatever they want.
Well, let's just say
there's no accountability.
Hamas can say whatever they want, and the world will believe them because some reason the world believes whatever Hamas puts out. If it's the death count narrative, the food aid count narrative, they just believe them. And somehow people don't put two and two together that all of those numbers come from Hamas Or they do know that and they just don't care.
Which, by the way, these videos, and actually you can find videos of the actual lie, like right out there. People call it what, Gaza wood or Pally wood or something.
Right.
But like these children that are faking being killed or hurt under this pile of rubble, and then they cut the cameras and they reset and they do it all over again. So you see that. But like what Luke was saying, these videos of emaciated children or children claiming they're starving, this hasn't been coming out recently. This has been all the way since the beginning of the war. Like just several months into the war, this narrative started that Hamas is starving and that Israel is starving Hamas because of the war. They're destroying, restaurants and food factories and all this, which probably started actually from social media, from Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all those.
Obviously it didn't end there because you have like New York Times headers. Right. Gaza is starving. Right. I mean, like the mainstream media took this on.
Right. So this report just came out from the Free Press, and in January of 2024, a headline came out from the New Yorker, said Gaza is starving.
Right.
Next, in March of 2024, the Washington Post ran a headline: "Is Gaza heading into a famine?" The next day, they ran another headline: "Israel's warned Hamas brings famine to Gaza." So in April.
So who paid for that ad? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, who actually is reporting that? Yeah.
Journalism.
Well, journalism, who was obviously the favorite, and we're finding out more and more, and anybody who's probably actually conservative in our world today realizes that journalism today is lazy, ignorant, willfully ignorant most of the time, and about the other half of the time just straight out lies.
More than that, paid off.
Right. You're paid off and you're brainwashed. So in April of 2024, Samantha Powers, who is the director of USAID, who is thankfully now is defunded, right, by President Trump. So in 2024, April, Samantha Powers, the director of USAID, officially declared that there was a famine in Gaza. And like this is the first big official that made this statement that this is happening in Gaza. She cited a report from the IPC, which is an independent United Nations affiliated monitoring system, which is organization that is basically like the gold standard when it comes to food security analysis worldwide. So they're constantly looking around the world, seeing places there's food shortages and seeing whether there's actual famines going on and alerting the world, right? So according to this organization, in the last 20 years, there have been 4 worldwide famines. And this is a very respected organization. Everybody trusts them. Somalia in 2011, South Sudan in 2017, and in 2020, and Sudan in 2024. So 3 of those are in Sudan. All of these famines are in Africa, right?
Right.
The problem is that this report that Samantha Powers actually cited did not say that there was a famine again, did not determine, according to their set of rules they go by, that there was a famine in Gaza. They simply warned that a famine was a possible outcome of this war in Gaza. So it gets even worse and actually kind of funnier in a really bad way. The USAID published their own analysis on what is happening in Gaza, and they declared that a famine was underway. But this report by the USAID, I guess, had to be confirmed and fact-checked by this global board of experts called the Famine Review Committee, the RFC. The crazy thing is the RFC rebuked this report, this analysis by USAID, saying it was completely false and its conclusions were insupportable. And nobody really said anything. So it turns out, in the USAID's analysis, they did not count when they're trying to figure out how much food's coming into Gaza, what the Gazans were actually receiving. They did not count private sector food deliveries, which is basically like private trucks that are hired by aid agencies to drive into Gaza and deliver food. They didn't count that. They also didn't count 82% of what the northern Gazans in northern Gaza received, their daily received calorie count was. They didn't count 82% of that. They also didn't count 940 metric tons, which is 2 million pounds of flour, sugar, and salt and yeast, which was donated by the UN to bakeries in northern Gaza, which is enough to make about 3 million pounds of bread. Turns out that northern Gaza, at the time this report came out, actually had 10 times more food than what the USAID had claimed. And none of this, barely any of this, actually made the news.
Of course not. It's called journalism. They're running their own show. They
It's
have
the
their
favorite,
agenda.
So I came across another analysis which I thought was really interesting. And bottom line here, like hold on to your seats, because basically there's more of a chance of children in the United States of America dying from starvation right now than there is for children in Gaza. Okay?
Wait, is that even possible? Is there starvation in America?
Not
Sounds
a lot.
impossible.
I don't think there's a lot. Okay. So
you're saying it's like impossible.
Hold on to your seats. Okay. Hold on to your seats. So this was published in World Israel News. Also is analysis put out from World Israel News by the Elder of Zion, popular anonymous pro-Israel blog that writes frequently. And they also talked to one of the experts from the the IPC? Yeah. Okay. So they've been examining Hamas's claims, which again, I don't know why we have to keep reiterating this, but it's Hamas's claims, meaning like nobody should take anything that Hamas claims at face value.
It's obviously propaganda.
Everything Hamas puts out is propaganda. They have a vested interest in not telling the truth, right?
Oh, and by the way, Hamas, just reiterating your point, Hamas recently deleted what, like 3,500 deaths from their count?
Well, they just
civilians who have been killed in Gaza.
70-something% now. Hamas is saying were combatants of people who were killed in Gaza.
It's like they just disappeared from the list, you know?
And obviously the media doesn't report that either. Guys, I don't want you to even hardly think about this possibility, but unfortunately we have to. Saudi Arabia and the Trump administration right now are really cozying up, and it looks like there could be some major partnerships happening very, very soon. Saudi Arabia is also co-hosting the UN summit in the first week of June with the intention of declaring an official recognition and global support and the intention of creating a Palestinian state in Israel's heartland. That means where I'm sitting right now could be made into a Palestinian state, and the world might be announcing that first week of June. That could be crazy, but imagine now that you don't get a ticket to the Israel summit, because that's happening the exact week after the UN summit. And guys, we're going to stand against this idea. The UN announces support for a Palestinian state. If America and the Trump administration announces support for a Palestinian state, if the world says it's happening and they're going to force it down Israel's throat, we're going to stand against that no matter what the cost is. And we want you to come and join us, because it's so important that thousands of people stand against this idea and instead stand with God's plan for the Jewish people and the entire nation of Israel. And that includes the entire land of Israel being sovereign territory for the nation of Israel. Guys, you have to come to the Israel Summit. We really, really want you there. We need you there. Israel and the Jewish people need you there. Right now, we have a special flash sale running because we want as many people as possible to come. Tickets are 25% off. You can use the promo code STAND, that's STAND, for 25% off. You can click the link in the description below. Go get your tickets for the Israel Summit right now. And if you can't come in person, make sure you get a live stream ticket so you can watch and participate and support from wherever you are in the world. If at all possible, I very much encourage you, come to the Israel Summit, June 9th through 11th, Dallas, Texas. Israel, the Jewish people, the kingdom of God needs your support. Number one, you can't trust Hamas, right?
Right.
But this report is actually going to use Hamas's own claims and their own numbers, right? Those claims, actually, and those numbers lead us to know that there's a higher incidence of death from hunger and malnutrition in the United States than in Gaza. Okay, so according to Hamas's own figures, Americans are 3 times as likely to die of malnutrition than Gazans right now during the war. 3 times. This is a statement from Hamas themselves in a press statement or a press release. They said the government media office in Gaza renewed its warning on Friday of the continuing and alarming deterioration of the humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip. This comes as the occupation continues to impose a stifling blockade, deliberately closing the crossings completely and preventing the entry of food and humanitarian aid for 55 days, almost 2 months, leading to a wider famine. Okay, so we know Israel cut off food 55 days ago, right? So there's got to be starvation. If there's no food allowed in for 55 days, there must be starvation, right? Wrong. According to World Israel News from the Elder Zion report, before the IDF started the blockade 55 days ago, 25,000 trucks filled with humanitarian aid and food, and mostly food and medicine, were delivered. Enough supplies to last for 3 months. Since the blockade started, 7 weeks have gone by. That means there's another 5 weeks worth of humanitarian aid still waiting to be distributed inside of Gaza. That means they have at least another 6 weeks before that 3 month supply has been used up. Not even to talk about the amount of food that had been delivered before that.
Right.
I believe one statistic said that they had enough food in Gaza for every person, man, woman, child, to eat 3,500 calories a day, which is about twice as many calories as I eat because, I typically am, watching my calories. So apparently everybody in Gaza is eating more than enough. But if you take these numbers, okay, let's say in 6 weeks, maybe we can start to think about maybe there's a danger of malnutrition or starvation, right? But not before that. So right now, at this very moment, there's absolutely no danger, unless the only caveat is if Hamas is stealing or holding back food from civilians, which they are doing in some cases, right? But there's not mass starvation danger.
You just think about
Gaza.
the logistics of that. Hamas is obviously, and we've seen this happening, they're obviously stealing a lot of the aid and the stuff they can't keep, they're selling to civilians, but they can't hoard. Like, it's impossible for them to be hoarding 3 months of food for the population of Gaza. 2.1 million people. That's a ton of food. And Hamas does not have the manpower to
hoard that much.
So
the other thing that it's in Hamas's interest to have starving people. Because they're using this, again, with their propaganda machine, they're using that as a ploy
they're interested to have
get
the lie
aid.
of starving people.
Right. It's a complete lie. It's a fabrication. But even at the point that they would starve people, like that would be that's what they would do. That's the kind of entity we're dealing with. Hamas would do something like that in order to get the West to feel sorry for, or this is something they would literally do to their own people. I mean, this is the whole Arab. We see that even locally here in Judea and Samaria. There's not even one so-called refugee camp that Israel has any control over. The Arabs themselves create these refugee camps that they themselves manage and put people in them and then rule them with their thumb on top of them and hurt them and abuse them in order for the media to come and look at and say, oh, Israel's terrible, when Israel has absolutely zero to do. You can see that even a few miles from here, next to the Balata refugee camp, so-called in Nablus. They're literally run with the same ideology. You create the scene, video it, and tell the world Israel did it to you.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing with this, 100%.
The other thing with starvation in Gaza is that there are probably a few instances of children actually starving and people actually starving. But if you think about it, all the videos you see in these viral clips that go viral and the ads that pop up on YouTube, which those are obviously fake, but the ones you see that children actually looking a little bit emaciated, like they're not fed very well, like there's like one person. There's one child that's starving in those videos. There's one, whatever it is. Like, if there was an actual famine in Gaza, if there was an actual starvation problem, you would be seeing clips. And we know this because Hamas cannot control the media in Gaza. They cannot control social media in Gaza. You would be seeing clips all over of crowds of people that are actually starving, crowds of people that are emaciated, that obviously haven't eaten in many, many weeks. And we're not seeing that.
You're not seeing that.
You're not seeing that, period.
You're seeing it as a ploy of the propaganda machine. Right. And if they know about it, there's certainly food to get a hold of it. So it's obviously a situation where they're using it to their advantage and not trying to help the poor child or person that's suffering.
Right.
And so I think a total of, let me find the number, 66,000 truckloads have been gone into Gaza of food and humanitarian aid since the beginning of the war. Obviously, Hamas has a practice of stealing as much of it as possible. Israel has bent over backwards to make sure that doesn't get stolen, makes it to the civilians that it's intended for. Just this week, the United Nations rejected an Israeli-U.S. plan to work with, I think, contractors and private companies to deliver food directly to Gazan civilians. Why would the UN reject a plan that would ensure that food makes it directly to the civilians? Because we all know that the UN prefers to work with Hamas, as it's been proven. No, that's not a conspiracy theory. UNRWA workers, United Nations Relief and Works Fund, were proven hard evidence that they were embedded with Hamas on October 7th. schools and other UN centers were embedded with Hamas. So the UN rejecting a plan that would get more food into the hands of Gazans, they just prefer to work with Hamas. The other reason we know Gaza is not starving is because we went there and like I saw hundreds of pallets stacked up. There was and we saw trucks going in and out. There was so much food that they had to like stop for the night because they couldn't even deliver it all. Like they took it in Gaza. They had to have a staging area of it stacked there so that the next day they could keep delivering it. So the whole thing's just an absolute farce.
Here's my question is, and we've just described this is absolutely farce, and it's very factual that this is not happening in Gaza. The mainstream media at war with Israel will continue to demonize and delegitimize the state of Israel by non-factual content. That will continue to happen. We're not going to change that on today's show. But at least for those that are listening that want to hear what's actually happening, this is truth. But very politically incorrect, I want to say, as the popular saying, I don't remember who said it, but war literally is hell. Israel is at war with Hamas. The Hamas population has not changed their minds. They want to destroy the nation of Israel. They're continuing to be a proxy of Iran. That has not changed. So facts on the ground, dealing with facts, Israel still has a militia of Iran hell-bent on destroying them that they are at war with. So this is war. And Israel has every right. I don't know if everybody knows anything about historic wars, but food shortages are typically a part of that.
So I saw an article, and I didn't put it in today's show, but I thought it was interesting. There was like a survey done that says support for Hamas is now lower in Gaza than it was before. And it's now at like 50% or something like that. And they're like praising this because this is such a great number, right? Now, number one, the article said the credibility of the poll or the survey was not very good, so we don't even know if it's true. But what struck me as ironic is that they were putting out the numbers that 50% of Gaza, only 50% of Gaza supports Hamas now, as opposed to before it was like 85% or 90%. And I just thought that was kind of ludicrous that like the world's like, yay, only half of Gaza actually supports
Think about
Hamas now.
A million women and children, civilians, people saying who are civilians, support Hamas, support what they did on October 7th.
Well, what I want to say is that, okay, so if there's a food shortage, this is a tactical reason for Israel to embrace a food shortage, not to kill people. No, absolutely not. But in order for them to wave the white flag and say, we surrender. That's that's the cause of this. And no one feeds their enemies. Tell me in history where somebody goes and feeds their enemy.
Go without food for about 2 days, maybe 3 days, and like those numbers of people that want to surrender would go up. I can guarantee you.
I guarantee you. Use it to your advantage and win the war.
People don't have to even die from starvation.
No,
you're talking about a couple of days, no food.
Right. If there's 2.1 million civilians in Gaza, if that number is actually correct, which we have no idea, and all of those people were starving, they would be forcefully marching to the border. It'll be forcefully trying to get out of Gaza, and we don't see that happen.
Well, and to speak, I would say for the Israeli majority and the Israeli public, they would say this is a big issue they have with this war. It's very political, and this war could have been won very quickly. Israel is still providing power, water, food, as we're talking about now. Power and water are still flowing. That's the fact. It all comes from Israel. This could have been stopped on day one. This war could have been finished like that.
Israel's withheld food for 55 days. They know when Gaza will run out of food.
They know.
And they're preparing a plan to start bringing food in again.
Of course.
So they're still not really cracking down. Just while we're on the topic of Gaza, before we move to Saudi Arabia, right? A recent survey conducted by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research is now showing that 49% of Gaza residents are prepared to actually work with Israel to emigrate to another country. So I thought that was interesting. The Defense Ministry of Israel has stated that they're prepared to process up to 2,500 civilians daily to leave Gaza. The problem? Nobody will take the Gazans in. There's no other countries will take the Gazans. You remember when Jordan said that they were going to take 2,500 sick and injured children?
Right.
Who was it? Did one of you guys? Somebody did a show this week. It was something like 40 something children Jordan took in, and then they cut off the program. And nobody heard about that. Jordan didn't actually take in the children that they promised they were going to. I think they promised Trump they were going to take in several thousand children, and they didn't. Nobody wants the Gazans. Nobody will take them in. Egypt won't take them in. Jordan won't take them in. Israel's saying we are prepared to help them leave. We'll help them. So if anybody is innocent or, women, children, we want to get them out. We don't want people to die.
Israel's been saying this for a very long time.
Right.
And Donald Trump, when he took office, has also been saying this. Let's move the Gazans to another place. And like every single country that's screaming genocide, every single country that's screaming there's famine in Gaza, not one of them will take a single Palestinian quote unquote refugee.
So interesting announcements from Trump.
Yeah, no, I was just actually literally getting very concerned about this because I think there's reason to be concerned with the twist that's happening. Obviously, U.S. has had a lot of interest in Saudi Arabia for a long time. This is nothing new, but there is some new things that are happening there, including President Trump scheduling a visit mid-May to Saudi Arabia, and at this point, no including
a Trump tower, a new
Israel.
Trump resort in Saudi Arabia.
No, the big deal is that he doesn't plan to come to Israel.
He's not coming.
Why he comes to that visit? Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. That's a big. So is there something changing here? Is Trump not coming to Israel signaling something? I think it signals a lot to the Middle East. Renaming the Persian Gulf the Gulf of Arabia. Obviously, Trump's got some big interest in saying, listen, it's no longer Iran, Persian, right?
Right.
It's no longer Iran that's the head of this Middle Eastern superpower.
Yeah.
And he's putting his stakes in with the Saudi Arabia. And if he puts his stake in on Saudi Arabia, who already has the second largest fleet in the world of F-15s, America just signed a contract with them for $3.5 billion for a military contract with an arms deal. What's going on? And Saudi Arabia has just replied back that they want to sink $600 billion into America, invest into America over the next 4 years. Now, I know everybody doesn't probably understand those dollar marks, but just to put that into comparison, $600 billion, that's an insane amount of money. I don't know how to even compare that to something else.
The Saudi Arabia is kind of like one of those big question marks, right?
Right.
As to like, who are they allies with? Who do they stand with? Because to me, they seem like they've been a little bit neutral. Obviously, they've like supported a Palestinian state idea on paper.
Right.
But when it comes down to practicalities, they don't really want anything to do with the Palestinians. Israel's been pursuing getting normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia for a number of years now.
Right.
They have, I know Jared Kushner and the Trump administration from their first administration was really pushing that over the whole deal of the century and potential sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. It's just kind of a big question mark. Nobody really knows which way they could go.
Right.
If Saudi Arabia could normalize relations and join the Abraham Accords with Israel, like that would be amazing. But it's kind of one of those, it all goes back to the Bible, right? It's a choice. Is Saudi Arabia going to choose the blessing of Abraham? Are they going to choose that blessing of Abraham of aligning themselves with Israel and those blessings, or are they going to go the opposite direction?
Right. And there was indications back to fall of 2023, indications that Saudi Arabia was willing and maybe thinking seriously about signing Abraham Accords with Israel. Israel was working very diligently, very hard with Saudi Arabia. And some people think that could be why Hamas attacked when they did on October 7th, was to kind of stop that. Because they need somebody like Saudi Arabia. Obviously, they have Iran as their main backer, but they need the money. They need that support as a major player in this Middle East, this Arab states alliance that they have to support them as the Palestinians and their goal for statehood.
Which Saudi Arabia has had clear support for the so-called Palestinian people and Palestinian statehood in the context of the Jewish state. They want to divide the Jewish state, Jerusalem as their capital, and create a 22nd Arab state called Palestine. Saudi Arabia has been very clear about that. Right. And so this is what I'm really concerned about, because President Trump, I believe, as the America First kind of ideology is taking a lot of strong attention in America, and understandably, But still, America still has a lot of foreign policy. There's still a lot of foreign influence out there. And as it relates to Saudi Arabia, what I see happening is Trump's looking at what is good for America on a very physical. If Saudi Arabia can bring $600 billion into America, invest into America, that's good for America. And he's not looking at potentially a long-term situation here with Israel, Saudi Arabia. Hopefully, obviously, we'll probably see some kind of accords happening. But if the dollars are going down on Saudi Arabia and potentially removing that a bit from Israel and kind of a deal, now we've got trouble. Because if we literally look at the numbers, and there's no hard facts on Israel's what Israel invests into America on an annual or over the next 4 years. But to put them side by side, it would be somewhere probably within the realm of 30 to 50 billion with all of the defense stuff. Israel does tons of defense cooperation with America and high tech. Those two are massive industries of cooperation and have literally billions of dollars of working together and investing in America. Now, to say, okay, so now you got Israel over here that maybe 30, 50 billion is what I looked at. To 600 billion, it's going to be kind of a no-brainer. Okay, these are going to be our big dog relationship now, and this is going to be kind of secondary. If that's the case, and Israel becomes secondary in this, and that's reading it a lot, then that's a big issue because, and I'll boil this down to how it could affect Israel badly now. It's not like America's going to lose support for Israel. I don't see that's not happening right now. Obviously, America has great support for Israel. But in relation to a Palestinian state is where it gets really juicy and really down to the nitty gritty problematic.
Right. What is Saudi Arabia? The big question, what does Saudi Arabia want from Trump? And what are they going to for this, $6
Why
billion?
would they be sending $6 billion to invest in America?
And as of right now, they are scheduled to co-host the UN conference June 2nd through 4th, I think, at the UN in New York to promote the idea of the Palestinian state.
Not just to promote the idea. They want tangible solutions. They want a tangible recognition. They said this has gone on for far too long. There's been a lot of talk about it. This is going to be the summit where Palestine will be recognized. They want boots on the ground recognition. And this is Saudi Arabia. So what are they buying? And this is what I think they're buying.
Well, this is off the top of my head, but if they're promising Trump $600 billion of investments in the United States, I'm not confident that Trump would reject the idea of a Palestinian state for sure, or the two-state solution, because
that's a big investment.
Probably sounds really good to him. The two-state solution, peace for the whole region. If you don't fully understand the boots on the ground, the politics here, then that's very dangerous. Obviously, you have Ambassador Mike Huckabee here, who hopefully will really help him understand the reality of the situation so that the United States would stand against that. But I wouldn't say it's 100%. There's that very real danger.
It's definitely not 100% because it also depends on how Saudi Arabia frames this two-state solution. Is this something that's orchestrated by Saudi Arabia? Is it negotiated between the Palestinian factions? Who's going to be in charge? It's going to be funded. There's all these sorts of things that could look really good.
Yeah, Trump could come up with all kinds of stuff. The United States will help, can help operate the government of the Palestinian Authority.
Well, that's what they're already doing right now in Gaza. They just literally proposed that in Gaza. It was rejected, but America proposed to come in and actually run the place.
Yeah.
I see some really serious red flags with the relationship with Saudi Arabia. Not that it is in its essence bad that America has a great relationship with another country and could provide another collaboration between Israel and Saudi Arabia would be amazing. But if the background sinister reason for it all is to create another Arab state and split Israel in half, create a Palestinian state in the biblical heartland of Israel, divide Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen, that will not happen. That will not happen. It has not been able to happen, and we're going to see some major blowdown over it if that's the direction that this is indeed going. Reason for a lot of concern.
It's just coincidence, which we know from Ari Abramowitz. There's no coincidence in Hebrew, right? The Israel summit's happening the exact week after this summit. We literally could be looking at the declaration of a Palestinian state at the Israel summit in Dallas this June, and it's important that we come together and stand against it. So, guys, get your tickets. You got to come to the Israel summit. Dallas, Texas, June 9th or 11th. I want to read a quote from Defense Minister Israel Katz warning Iran. By the way, I just thought it was epic what Israel did to Yemen this week. They didn't respond and strike, missile launching sites and take out a ballistic missile launch or whatever. They took out the entire international terminal of the Yemen airport, including their airplanes, including their infrastructure. They gave everybody a warning. They said, get out. Everybody fled, and they just bombed the entire thing. Estimated, I think, $500 million in damage. I just saw a meme. I should have had it ready to put in the show about how Yemen announced they're ready to fly again or something, and it was like all these people boarding an airplane, except instead of an airplane, it was a paper airplane.
You're right.
That's like all they got left.
Well, no, that's really ridiculous. I keep seeing this thing, and also this is also concerning. Talk about America again.
Yeah.
Is this
America's
really
backed off of Yemen? Yeah, like why? Like what in the world?
Right.
America? And they did not promise that they would not keep attacking Israel. They actually promised the opposite. They promised that they would continue to attack Israel.
I don't think they even promised that they would stop attacking the U.S. That's what Trump claims. But the Houthis keep going back. No, we didn't claim that. We're still going to attack U.S. ships.
It's a little bit idiotic for a kind of tribal people to be, acting like they're somehow making war on America and being successful. Obviously, very much so not successful.
Of that you can believe any kind of statement from a third world Middle Eastern Arab country, Muslim country,
right?
Because statements
are not worth the statement from Trump was very weak sounding. Yeah. It was basically like the Houthis promised to stop bombing the shipping routes. And so we're going to stop attacking them. I was like,
so.
Why would believe their promise or something?
They said we're going to take their word for it. I'm like, why would you take the word of your third world country, your enemies?
Where's the policy, American policy? So we do not negotiate with terrorists, right?
Israel just bombed the heck out of them, which is just amazing. So Katz issued a warning to Iran today, actually, in the wake of this bombing, and he said, quote, I warn the Iranian leadership. The era of proxies is over and the axis of evil has collapsed. You bear direct responsibility. What we did to Hezbollah in Beirut, to Hamas in Gaza, to Assad in Damascus, and to the Houthis in Yemen, we will do to you in Tehran. We will not allow anyone to harm Israel, and those who harm us will be severely harmed. Israel proved this week that they do not take attacks lightly. One missile hits the Ben Gurion airport, and Israel responded by wiping out the entire international terminal of the Yemen airport in Yemen. So I don't like the fact that they let so many ballistic missiles get fired at them before they went to that took that step. But Israel did prove they are not willing to play around for sure. Last thing I want to mention, I think this is ironic too. Two terrorist attacks happened in Judea and Samaria this week. Yesterday, a terrorist shot several soldiers in a vehicle in northern Samaria, close to the murderous terrorist refugee camp in Jenin, which is just a terrorist hotbed. 2 soldiers were critically injured. I think they're currently ventilated, awaiting surgery, which is just crazy. They were shot in the upper body. At the exact same time, a terrorist rammed his car into soldiers in Judea in an IDF area, exited the car and started stabbing people, and one person was injured from that before the terror was neutralized. It struck me that I had to actually think, I should talk about this in the show because terrorism is so kind of normalized,
right?
Not just in Judea and Samaria, but like in Tel Aviv and in Haifa and in it's like all over Israel. I think there was a statistic that said more Israelis were attacked in Israel proper than Judea and Samaria last year. But there's a report of terrorism from 2024. Terrorist groups targeted Israeli Jews in Judea and Samaria at least 6,343 times in 2024, including 179 instances of gunfire. And that's according to the Hatzalah of Judea and Samaria. Hatzalah is the rescue service. 27 Israelis were murdered in Judea and Samaria in 2024, and more than 300 others wounded. Struck me as ironic in the wake of the awful BBC documentary that came out, and the whole documentary was about ethnic cleansing and genocide and Palestinians being so oppressed and the occupation and stuff. Not one mention of an Israeli that was killed in an act of terrorism in 2024. And this documentary was filmed in 2024. Not one mention of 6,343 terrorist attacks in Judea and Samaria. Only talking about the poor Palestinians that were oppressed and put down, and so it's just crazy. Like, we need to remember that this stuff's still happening, and basically whatever the BBC and most of the mainstream media is putting out, the opposite is exactly what's happening.
Well, again, Luke, it's back to where we started. Journalism versus sovereignty. We've sat there, we've seen it. Our whole team has seen it. We live here in the
Seems like journalism is winning, but
it's not. Well, it's just that because they're propagating a lie. We've been there and been on the sites where all of these networks, there was 14 reporters we counted one time, lined up, all the major news networks, lined up, recording a scene of Arabs throwing rocks, starting fires, lighting tires, putting their keffiyehs on and throwing their rocks, and there was not one Israeli present.
That was what we recorded
nothing.
personally.
Yeah. We turned the camera around, and if anybody was to watch it, obviously these major news networks are absolute fools and idiots for deceiving the world into believing their plot that they actually organized.
Actually, their cameraman and journalists were willing to stand there and pretend that there was a riot going on.
Right.
And
Pretend
only
that they're protesting occupation.
The protesters and the rioters, and not show the fact that it was just an empty road and it was a Hollywood act.
It was a Hollywood act of skits where they were hauling people out with ambulances. The only people they could haul out for ambulances was idiots that got burned themselves by lighting tires. They were acting like their Israelis were shooting them or something. There was just no one there. It was an empty place where these people were all there. So literally, that's the facts on the ground. And I believe that's why you're here watching what's actually going on here at the Israel Guys is that we want to bring you the truth of what's actually happening, not the fake. We're not turning our cameras so that you can just, and talking about things that aren't real. These are our personal experiences. And this is what we're experiencing boots on the ground here.
Josh, just imagine June 2nd, June 3rd, June 4th, the United Nations and the world declares a Palestinian state. God forbid, okay? Just imagine that. And then imagine that you did not get a ticket to go to the only conference in the U.S. the week later that's going to stand against that and show the world, including the United States, the administration, that this will not happen.
Well, can I tell you why it's important, Luke? Because this is really why it's important. This has been our whole show today. Does President Trump understand the significance of Judea and Samaria? Mm-hmm. Does he understand the significance? Does he understand the incredibly wrong, the incredibly massive injustice of dividing Israel's biblical heartland off, dividing Jerusalem and creating a Palestinian terror state that will fight tooth and nail against the state of Israel for their whole existence? Does he understand the danger of that?
Yeah.
And I don't think he does. I don't think the American people understand the danger of that. Mm-hmm. In order for this not to happen, the American people have to say something. There's not another conference happening in America.
Yeah,
There's just not another moment where this is being represented, where leaders from Judea and Samaria are coming to America, where leaders in America are gathering to support the initiative of the Zionist initiative. It's just like going back 100 years ago as it relates to Judea and Samaria, to create a sovereign Jewish state in all of Israel's biblical borders, specifically the biblical heartland of Israel. This must be achieved. And if we don't gather, and we don't gather in many numbers, if the numbers are little and we don't make massive impact, guess what that's going to translate into? It's the only conference on this issue. And if it's not a major success, it'll speak one thing to President Trump. The American people do not care about this.
Thankfully, you guys are coming, you're registering, you're buying tickets, but we want more. We want as many people as possible. We have a facility that can hold a lot of people. June 9th through 11th, guys, good news right now, you can get 25% off tickets, but only for a very limited window. We just did like a flash sale, and it's not going to last very long. You can use promo code STAND, STAND, for 25% off your tickets. That's 50% off the summit tickets, $125 or $50 off regular tickets, and $125 off the full access tickets. Go to the link in the description below right now. Please consider coming to the Israel Summit June 9th through 11th in Dallas, Texas. If you can't come for some reason, get a live stream ticket so you can at least watch and stand and support from where you are in the world and from your home. Guys, as always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda. Connect with the truth of what's happening in Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Israel Guys.